Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Friday edition of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are free and available on all major platforms, and thank you for making us your first listen. I am John Hickman. Of course, I'm joined by Coty Davis, and we got to talk Texans on this great Friday before we get out of here for the week as we prepare to take on the Indianapolis Colts. No Brandon K. Scott today, so Coty and I have some great conversations, and I hope you guys enjoy them. Coty, you know the routine. Take them down the road. Let's talk Texans.
Yes, sir. And on this Friday installment of Locked On Texans, John and I are going to take a look at how the Houston Texans can and should build their backfield for this offseason. And speaking of the backfield, we're actually going to close out this latest installment of Locked On Texans by revisiting the Houston Texans 2020 NFL draft, in which they selected Ross Blacklock over Jonathan Taylor and a handful of other talented running backs. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get this Friday installment of Locked On Texans kicked off by hearing from the listeners, you guys, to see what do you guys have in store for us today.
Absolutely. And I want to kick it off with my man, David. You know, he mentioned me on Twitter and let me know that he kind of apologized about his comment that he made on Tuesday's show. When we talked about should the Houston Texans keep Titus Howard at left tackle and how the relationships have been fractured. And Coty, what he had to say was, I wish someone called Cully or Caserio out on the BS that comes out of their mouth. We obviously can see through their BS, like people say. They want to be Patriots. We are known for wasting players' careers. I love the Texans, but it's the truth. And to that comment, I would say that reporters do a very good job, I think, in the city of Houston so far this year. Sometimes we may disagree with their questions, but there are some great reporters out there in the media that have at times challenged in a very professional way David Culley and Nick Caserio. Now, of course, they're not able to go out there at press conferences and kind of speak maybe 100% what's on their mind or not allow the fans to speak through them. Well, there have been times this year where I've listened to a press conference, joined in, and, I'm like, this is a very great question. And a lot of those times when those questions are asked, Coty, and viewers, especially my man David, when they are asked, you may see whether it's Caserio, Culley, or a player, maybe an assistant coach, you may see them stumble a little bit on their response. So I will say, let's give some credit to our media guys. We've seen the dysfunction so far this year, the media for Houston, but they do a very good job of challenging the general manager and head coach, just in a very professional way, which I think we all should respect and enjoy.
And to that point, I do want to add, just to give the perfect example, I was actually in that situation where, I was questioning them about something, and John, to your point, they started stumbling. It was, I think, the day before the trade deadline, and I asked David Culley, ever since he got hired, he was always talking about how professional Deshaun Watson has been through all of the nonsense, whether it be his legal issues or, just not wanting to be here, wanting to go to Miami. But he always talked highly of Deshaun, and we all kind of knew that it was basically for show. And I asked David Culley straight up, I said, if Nick Caserio is able to move Deshaun Watson to Miami, would you feel disappointed that he never gave you or this organization a chance, especially considering how adamant you and Nick Caserio was about how Deshaun Watson is still this team quarterback? Culley started stumbling. He looked at me and said, no comment, and would hurry up and moved on to the next question. I just wanted to throw that in because as reporters, we try our hardest to get the truth, but a lot of times when we are at the podium with these players, especially a head coach like David Culley, who I'm pretty sure every time he's speaking to the media, he's giving a script on what to say, especially about a Deshaun Watson situation, or as we saw this past week, Justin Reed. I refuse to believe that he was the end all be all to suspend Justin Reed over a questionable challenging that Reed had with Coach Culley. So it's hard to say, but we try our best.
Right. And I would say to that, Coty and I, we went to school for broadcast communication. We go through training before we can graduate. Well, players, coaches, GMs, guys around the team, they also go through a very detailed training in regards to how to respond to the media. And if you don't have anything insightful to say, no comment is the best way to go. Razor a couple of days ago, man, he went crazy on the post. The Monday recap show had 3 different posts, and I want to highlight 2. The first one, he mentioned how he wishes we had an owner that knows football, because if he did, he would get rid of Jack Easterby and Nick Caserio for the simple fact they are friends. Suspending Justin Reed was dumb. But I think the better one to me is another thing they need to get rid of Bill O'Brien's disciples. Tim Kelly must go. And, I 100% agree with that, Razor. I believe that this was a good year for him to show whether or not he's capable of holding that clipboard for 17 games without having his hand held or without playing with Deshaun Watson. Let's keep it real. Let's be fair. Deshaun Watson is going to make any OC look good because of his talent and his talent alone, right? And so, because before Tim Kelly, I want to say Godsey was Houston's OC. I believe so. But this was an audition year for him. He failed. And now it's time for Houston, which I'm sure they are right now, going through the process of finding a new OC, which may already be on this coaching staff. We've alluded to a long time ago, if you guys may remember this, if you listen to the show, how Pep Hamilton may be the next guy up, and that they brought Pep Hamilton in this year to allow Tim Kelly kind of a filler year and give Pep time to learn this team and learn the offense and kind of learn what they want to do here in Houston. So it wouldn't shock me if Pep Hamilton is the OC for the future.
Yeah, and I 100% agree. And by the way, I do want to add, the only reason why Tim Kelly was still here is because they thought that he can be the person that could kind of change Deshaun Watson's mind about wanting out of Houston, because Deshaun and still does have a good relationship with Tim Kelly.
Absolutely. Can't wait to talk about the running backs. Houston needs a change, and Houston has been historically bad running the ball so far this year. So don't go anywhere. More Locked On Texans coming up. Before we move on, here's a word from our sponsors. You guys listen to the podcast for the power of knowledge, and you can switch to Boost Mobile for the power of saving money. Get 3 unlimited data lines for $30 a month per line and a free 5G phone whenever you switch, so you can get the latest episodes of the Locked On Texans, all on America's 5G network. More power to save, Boost Mobile. Disclaimer, free phone limited to new customers and 1 per line. Additional restrictions apply. Offers and coverage not available everywhere for all phones or networks. See boostmobile.com for more details. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Thank you for making the Locked On Texans your first listen every day. And again, we are free and available on all major platforms. Coty, viewers, there's no nice way to put it. The Houston Texans has been horrendous when it comes to running the ball. The entire offense has been bad. When you look at what's been the worst part of that offense, it is no doubt the running game. And Houston has been historically bad. I'll get into those numbers in a few. But David Johnson rushing stats so far this year: 176 yards, 3.1 yards per carry, 0 touchdowns. He's projected to end the year with 256 yards, 0 touchdowns. The last 5 games, 36 carries, 97 yards, and a laundry list of whiffled blocks. You guys saw those blocks, right? Rex Burkhead, 96 yards on the year, 2.6 yards per carry, 1 touchdown. He's projected to end the year with 140 yards in that lone TD. His last 5 games, 36 carries, 97 yards. The Texans currently have the worst rushing team in the league with league lows of 78.3 yards per game, league lows in yards per carry with 3.2, totaling 861 yards. And this is when 2 of your top rushers are not on the team anymore, with Mark Ingram and Phillip Lindsay. Okay? The Texans also are on pace to be one of the worst rushing teams in NFL history. They rank 23rd all time. 32 teams, 100 seasons of the NFL. And this Houston Texan team, ranked 23rd all time in fewest rushing yards in a season. And majority of the teams that group played in the 40s, the 1940s. I'm under my own impression that Houston needs a younger back, no doubt about it, but also do feel that the Houston Texans need a veteran back who can still be able to play some meaningful football. The 2 veteran backs that I will look at for Houston coming up this year's free agency, Sony Michel and Marlon Mack. I think those 2 guys are one of those running backs that can get you tough yardage. But overall, I think we can agree that Houston needs to revamp and reshape the entire running back group. The 2 draft prospects that I like a lot, Kenneth Walker out of Michigan State. He'll be a day 2 guy, I think a late 2nd or early 3rd round pick. And the OU back, Kennedy Brooks, 3 seasons with 1,000 yards, rushed for 6 yards per carry every season, and a late 3rd, early 4th round guy that I think he will be. Now, Coty and viewers, you guys, talk about it in the comments of today's show, but is it time to move on from running back coach Danny Barrett? Has he been a victim of circumstances due to the offensive line play that's been poor and the lack of decisiveness from the running backs, i.e. David Johnson and Phillip Lindsay? Those guys have done a terrible job so far this year hitting holes, and Phillip Lindsay is no longer with the Houston Texans. Is it been the product that he's been able or having to work with, or is it because the offensive line has not had a great season at all when it comes to running the ball?
In my opinion, you got to give Danny Barrett another year, because it's hard to evaluate him as a running back coach when the best running back that he had all season was, and no, he wasn't this age, but a 65-year-old Mark Ingram who hasn't played for the Texans in over a month, and he is still this team leading rushing in terms of all the running backs who they have put out there on the field this year. So I would say it's hard to evaluate him as a head coach from that reason. And of course, you got to talk about the offensive line. And even when that offensive line was healthy with Laramie Tunsil, with Justin Britt, and as you know, I always say Marcus Cannon to a certain extent, the offensive line never gave the running back a solid line to run behind. However, with that being said, John and listeners, when I take a look at how the Houston Texans should improve their backfield, I would like to see them draft a young running back, especially if they could get one of the top tier up and coming running backs, let's say in the 2nd round. But for me, John, I 100% agree with you. The Texans should go after a running back who is a veteran, but I'm not too sure if they're going to be able to do that in free agency, because given all the nonsense and all the drama that the Texans have been doing over the last 18 months or so, it's going to be once again extremely hard for Nick Caserio to bring in talent to this organization. And what I don't want to happen is to see the Texans signing another Phillip Lindsay where we say, oh, okay, well, he rushed for 200 and something yards his first 2 seasons. Last year was just a down year. Then he come here and ended up being worse than the guy that he was his last season with whatever team he was at. So me personally, depending on where you trade Deshaun Watson, you should ask for their starting running back in return. And the one team that I could think of right now is the New York Giants. The Giants are expected to start throwing their name in the Deshaun Watson trade fiasco this offseason. They are dying to get a franchise quarterback because they are basically set all over the board. I would not be mad if Nick Caserio asked for Saquon Barkley back. Now, I get it. This year, Saquon Barkley has not looked that great, but that's only because he's coming off that. I believe he had an ACL tear. And over the last
Saquon
couple
hasn't
games,
looked good in a few years since his rookie year, honestly.
I understand that, but even in a down year, Barkley has looked better than what we've been getting out of David Johnson over the last 2 years. He has looked better than what we've seen from Philip Lindsay, and it should be one of those. It could be one of those situations where he just might need a change of scenery. The same thing can be said for the Carolina Panthers. Yes, I understand Christian McCaffrey is out once again with an ankle injury. He's done for the entire season. But maybe for Christian McCaffrey's sake in his career, he probably need a whole new entire medical staff in order to get his career back on track. That's just me. Whoever takes on Deshaun Watson, Nick Caserio has to ask for the starting running back. And by the way, this scenario will be even better if Deshaun Watson opened up the list of teams that he wants to go to. Let's say, for example, he wants to go to random. Let's say he just say, trade me. I just want to get my career started. Hey, Minnesota, build me a package around Delvin Cooks and let's get this trade started. Hey, all of a sudden, Deshaun Watson wants to be the next LeBron James. Cleveland, this one's from you. Okay, build me a trade package around Nick Chubb. All of a sudden, let's say, and of course, this is unrealistic, but let's say all of a sudden, Cincinnati wants to get their hands on Deshaun Watson. Okay, build me a trade package around Joe Mixon. And of course, you could add Joe Burrow in there as well, but that's just me. In order for the Houston Texans to truly improve this run game, they're going to have to ask for the opposing team starting running back in a Deshaun Watson's trade. And it makes sense because in addition to draft picks, Nick Caserio do want young players who can actually be a foundational piece to this Houston Texans rebuild.
Well, here's my thing. I do have a rebuttal for that. Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, those guys have been dealing with injury, and I don't think they are worth bringing into a franchise that is unsure about their running game.
But that's the thing.
In regards to the offensive line.
If those players work out for the Texans, then it's a hit. But Nick Caserio and the Texans are in a situation where they can't be picky because even the running backs that you just named in free agency, they're not going to want to come here unless it's their last resort. That's it.
And I think that was important why I named Sony Michel. I think he's a guy that's got lost in the shuffle. He had a very good start to his career in New England, but got traded to the Los Angeles Rams, and that's not really working out. And he wants to be a guy who's, I think Sony is only 26 or 27 at this time. Mm-hmm. He still has some football left in him. When I look at Marlon Mack, Marlon is another player that, he's gotten lost in shuffle in Indy. Right, and so those two running backs coming out next year at the free agency, Houston can use them. And I would say more so Sony Michel, more so than Marlon Mack. But I wouldn't build a trade package around a running back, especially Christian McCaffrey or Dalvin Cook. McCaffrey has been placed on IR 3 times this year, and I think that's going to scare away a lot of teams or even his own team next year in regards to the future at running back, which is a great thing why they drafted Hubbard. But none of these running backs I would trade for. I would target running backs in the free agency because you would then be able to determine how much you're willing to pay. You trade for Christian McCaffrey, you're taking on Christian McCaffrey's contract. You trade for Dalvin Cook, you're taking on that contract. Now, if you bring in a running back like a Sony Michel, who has rushed for nearly 4,000 yards so far in his 5-year career. If you bring in a guy like Marlon Mack, who's a very good runner, has some good years with Philly, then you determine the market for them, okay? And you can take that veteran running back who knows the system, knows the NFL, knows how to get those tough yardage. That's mainly why I chose those two running backs. Tough yardage running backs that can wear down the defense, and then you can go out and draft a young running back in their second, third, maybe fourth round, day 2, day 3 type of running back. and you determine that price as well. They're going to get the rookie deal on a running back as well. So that helps Houston save money. That helps Houston get tremendously better because I don't think any of the running backs on this roster, maybe a Royce Freeman, we'll see what he does Sunday. If he gets carries, comes back on next year. But overall, Houston needs to revamp everything about this running back group. And on top of that, you know what comes with revamping that running back group? Saving money. David Johnson makes entirely way too much money for the productivity that he has given Houston since he was traded from day one. That's not his fault. He didn't give himself that contract. He didn't force a trade to Houston. However, it gives me nightmares when I think about Houston overpaying a running back in the future because it didn't work out before and it ain't going to work out no time soon. This holiday season, grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy or even better than a candy bar. Built Bar, filled with so much holiday goodness, rich and decadent flavor, covered in 100% chocolate, but amazingly low in calories, sugars, net carbs, and fats, but high in protein. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. So many flavors, you'll have a hard time choosing. You will have raspberry, mint brownie, cherry, double chocolate, cookies and cream, peanut butter, brownie. Oh my gosh. Built Bar gives you that extra fuel you need to bust down those mall doors and battle for the holiday shoppers. Or if you're just standing in an endless line, Built Bar will give you that extra something you need to keep it going. So throw one in your jacket or your purse. You never know when you're going to need it. Like some of those marshmallowy treats around the holidays, you need to get your hands on the Built Bar Puffs. They are light, fluffy, marshmallowy through and through, different flavors, all covered in chocolate. Taste so good, you won't believe that they were filled with protein. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order at Built.com. And you guys know here at Locked On Texans, we are all in on saving you money. Just told you about how you can save money, 15% off at Built.com. But now BetOnline has you covered all season. More props, more odds, more lines than ever before as football season continues to march to the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. So head to the new updated desktop or mobile website today. Sign up and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code Locked On to receive your bonus. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline is where the game starts. Thanks for making the Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Be sure to check out Monday's recap show, whether it be a Victory Monday or a Monday where we discuss why and how the Texans suffered a loss. Now make your second listen to Locked On Bets podcast, your daily one-stop shop for all of your gambling needs. Hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms.
All righty, ladies and gentlemen, as we close out this Friday installment of Locked On Texans, John, Sunday's game is going to be really hard to watch because you know they're going to get ran through by Jonathan Taylor. And every time I see the name Jonathan Taylor, every time I see a highlight, I always think to myself that he could have been a Houston Texan.
Right.
And he should have been a Houston Texan. And as a matter of fact, they selected Ross Blacklock in the second round of the 2020 NFL draft, one spot ahead of arguably the second best running back in today's game.
Right. If you exclude, Derrick Henry, who's out right now due to injury.
That's why I say second best. Yeah. And as you say, if you exclude him because he's out due to injury, he is the best running back in the league. And it's kind of ironic that you and I literally just had a discussion on how the Houston Texans can improve their backfield. And Sunday, it's another reason why they should not be in this situation, because I get it. When you go back and you take a look at the 2020 draft class, you're looking at the second round, and I can't remember which pick Ross Blacklock was, but they knew he was at 40. So they knew at that 40th pick that they wasn't going to bring back Carlos Hyde. And yes, the trade for DeAndre Hopkins and David Johnson was already done, but because David Johnson was the older back, you would think a general manager would have the senses to say, okay, David Johnson is getting up there in age. he hasn't been the all-pro David Johnson over what a span at that time. He was 3 years removed from that. You would think that they would have drafted a younger back just to be on the safe side. And by the way, the Houston Texans were coming off a season where they ran a 2-set running back in Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson and actually had success. And
very good success. Yes.
It's not what bugs me the most, John and listeners. It's not the fact that they passed up on Jonathan Taylor. They passed up on J.K. Dobbin, who was drafted a little bit later in the second round. They even passed up on A.J. Dillon. Now, A.J. Dillon, entering week 13 of the NFL season, has rushed for a total of 543 yards. When you combine that, when you compare that to David Johnson, your boy Rex Burkhead, and even Philip Lindsay, all three of those running backs have a combined rushing total number of 402. And when you exclude Philip Lindsay from this list because he's no longer with the Texans, David Johnson and Rex Burkhead have a combined rushing total of 272. I just don't know what to say. And by the way, that's just the running back. We're not even going to talk about how they also passed up on defensive players that they could have used if the Texans wanted to go defense.
Jonathan Taylor went to a great place. He had a left guard in Quentin Nelson, the best left guard in the game, a much better offensive line. And I think that is what has helped him get to where he is right now. I think the offensive line play by Indy has been good this year. I thought last year that they were good as well. I don't think he will replicate the same productivity that he's doing the first 2 years in Indianapolis in Houston due to the fact that, well, Houston, as we saw, got one offensive lineman that's played three positions. And last year, Houston was big on swing tackles, right? This is just weird stuff to me, a swing tackle or a guy that can play multiple positions. That type of stuff, as much as the NFL has been progressing upward, that type of stuff I normally don't think works well. That's just me, right? And so I will say that Taylor's future has a lot to do with where he landed. I don't believe he's the type of player, for instance, Houston had an opportunity to draft Darrelle Revis, and they passed up on him. I think Darrelle Revis is a player that no matter where you put him, he's going to be Darrelle Revis. Right? I don't think that's going to be the same case for Jonathan Taylor. However, to your point, Jonathan Taylor, the younger back, you go into year 2, which is what he's in right now, you don't have these issues, I don't think so. I think that Jonathan Taylor is much better than all of the running backs that Houston put on the field this year.
And John, to that point, before closing out, I understand that, it doesn't matter who the Houston Texans have in that backfield. This offensive line is shaky, but I always go back and I think to myself that Carlos Hyde rushed for over 1,000 yards with an offensive line that, when healthy in 2021, I would consider better than the offensive line that Carlos Hyde rushed behind in 2019. So with all that being said, it doesn't matter how you look at this. The talent in that backfield is just god awful. And to your point, John, it's historically awful.
Historically awful. And we can agree on one thing. Houston desperately needs to address the running back room next offseason. Guys, I can't wait to talk to you on Monday. I'm John Hickman. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Texans. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the Locked On Texans YouTube page. Comment as well. Coty, where can they find you?
And as always, you can find me on Twitter at CotyDavis_24. Once again, that's Coty, COTY DAVIS_24. Ladies and gentlemen, 6 more games. 6 more games, and this nightmare will be over.
No, it won't.
And we could start the nightmare of the 2021 season will be over. Then we could start. That's one thing I do like about the season coming to an end soon. We could sort of have hope and promise. You see what you're gonna get back for Deshaun Watson, which is still gonna hurt. You can look at all these up and coming top prospects in the 2022 draft. You could see who they could trick into signing in free agency, and we'll all be optimistic about what we're going to see in 2022. That's all I'm saying, John. I just want hope again. I missed the offseason because we had hope, a little bit of hope. Hope that this was a team that could at least win 5 games.
You had that hope. And until Monday, ladies and gentlemen, have a great weekend. We'll see you soon. Peace.